Partha, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start with a very basic, question. Do you think India has enough and more coal availability to meet the surge in power demand? Because India is still dependent on coal produced by Coal India to fire their thermal plants.
Well, you see, the availability of coal in India is not in doubt. There's abundant availability. The issue is one of policy. See, you can't have a situation where coal comes to the rescue of the power sector if you are doing on and off kind of situation with coal. Today you say that no more coal power plants are required. Tomorrow you say no, another 30,000 megawatts of power plant has to be developed on coal. So you open up coal, again you take a different kind of an approach, you go more for renewables. Renewables are absolutely fine, but you have to have a consistent policy. I think that is where we have a problem. If you just give me a 1 minute's time, I'll just try to explain this. You see, starting from 2017-18, we saw a situation for successive 3-4 years where every year coal production was degrowing and stocks were increasing. Reason was that we all felt that coal is the epitaph has to be written on the coal sector. There is no need of coal. And now again in 21, when the post-COVID economic recovery started, suddenly we found that we are in a precarious situation. Coal has to go up. Fortunately, we had at that point in time 100 million tons of coal in stock, so we could draw upon that stock. That stock was with Coal India. So there was a stock drawdown from 100 to 60 million. 40 million ton drawdown took place. And that's how the power sector could be, their requirement could be met. 22-23, we did something more constructive. We actually increased production by 80 million tons in Coal India, and also the captive miners. That segment also started producing more coal. So, and now again, sometimes if you say that no more coal power plant, coal is on the way out, and these kind of things, then it doesn't send right messages, right signals across the situation. We have to be very clear that we need coal for the next 25-30 years. And there is no denial to that. Renewables should be allowed that kind of time to come up to a particular situation. India is a situation where the per capita power consumption is one of the lowest in the world, 1/3 of the world average and 1/5 of China. So it has to grow. If India develops, that has to grow. And if that has to grow, you can't meet it with growing renewables. You have to have renewable can only complement coal. That is the Indian situation. Worldwide, if you are adding renewable capacity, fossil fuel-based capacity should decrease. But it is not the situation in India. It's basically a complementary kind of situation. And earlier we realized that this situation is going to continue for another 25-30 years, the better it is. Then we should be more, in a more holistic manner, we'll be able to address the needs of energy security of this country. This is my take. And of course, we have sufficient amount of coal, particularly thermal coal, there is no problem. And lots of coal blocks have been auctioned. Those blocks should also come up. There are some constraints there, financing constraints and all those. If those constraints can be addressed, and the financial policy of the banks, etc., are more attuned towards the Indian requirement rather than the global kind of ESG things, I think in that situation, we should not face a situation where the country goes into a power shortage, very critical power shortage. We should be able to avoid that. But we need holistic policy considerations. Well, climate change is important. We have to address all those things. But at the same time, we have to meet the growing energy demand of a growing nation. That is also paramount. So the two things don't meet really. We have to really look at it in a more holistic manner so that the both objectives are achieved, and there's a progressive phase out of coal, maybe after 20 years. For the current situation, coal consumption every year will be higher than the previous year. That we cannot avoid that situation.
Obviously. But Mr. Bhattacharya, just wanted to understand, in the very near term, do you think the situation with coal availability could get worse before seasonality, seasonally weak winter kicks in? And will we then have to increasingly resort to, say, imported coal to meet our needs?
See, I will tell you, from the second half of FY22, rather 21-22, the kind of growth in coal production that the country has witnessed has never happened before. We are growing at more than 10%, in double digit. I have not come across a situation where Coal India had that kind of growth. So if that kind of growth happens, I don't see a situation where coal should be, there should not be too much of dependence on import. Yes, we have to depend on imported coal, not for thermal, for the other things like metallurgical coal and some high value, high energy thermal coal, which we don't have in this country. But for power, I don't see any need. And of course, for the coastal power-based power stations which were designed on imported coal, leaving that apart, for the mainstream power plants, I don't see a need that the domestic coal availability will have to be supplemented or complemented by imported coal. There are more players have already come in. The Coal India is producing at a record high. This year, I'm quite sure they will again achieve another 80 million tons of growth, which they achieved last year. And the captive miners are also producing fairly well. The problem a little bit is with the coal block allottees. The new block allottees, they are finding it difficult to get finance and all that. So a little bit of policy intervention there may help them to come on board. If that happens, thermal coal should not be a problem for the next whatever years, even in the short term and long term both.
So, if Coal India has to, in a sense, ensure that the coal availability is taken care of, do you think they are investing enough? Every time, sometimes the Coal India will blame it on railways in terms of rack availability. Railways will blame it on Coal India in terms of supply. Sometimes they both blame each other, and sometimes everybody blames them.
You have to appreciate that is more a matter of past. These days they don't blame each other. They are working in a very congenial and complementary manner. Railways are also increasing their rake availability. Coal India is, of course, investing. It is investing as well as it is giving off a number of large projects on an MDO route. So that has effect of fast increasing coal production. You can imagine 13% growth in coal production in 1 year is unheard of. At least in our times, it used to be 5-6%. So Coal India has definitely geared itself in every sense of the term, and the railways have also matched their capacities. So there is no more. You'll not find in the public domain too much of hard-hitting sentences going across from here to there. They are working in a more with a sense of camaraderie. They're trying to solve a national problem.
My final question is in terms of the whole idea of imported coal. Do you think that is something which needs to be considered? It may be a band-aid approach, but a band-aid approach is necessity sometimes when it is an emergency.
See, we have been importing thermal coal also for quite some time. We have been meeting our demand-supply gap with thermal coal. But after this Ukraine war set up and the coal prices became highly volatile, thermal coal prices, I think we learned a hard lesson that we should not depend, because thermal coal resources are hugely available in this country. For thermal coal, we should reduce or rather eliminate our dependence on imported coal to the extent possible. That should be our outcome. The coal that we don't have, metallurgical coal or very high energy coal, those things imports will continue. But thermal coal import, to my mind, should not be necessary. We should be able to meet that demand domestically.
Partha, great to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for taking the time out and joining in.